Welcome back to Let's Not Sugarcoat It. Season 3 is here and we're excited to dive into the core of communication, relationships, and leadership.
We're your hosts, Bella and Lee, a husband and wife duo with a successful business helping couples and organizations get it together to play a bigger game and elevate their relationships and performance.
We believe in keeping it real, so each week we'll bring you incredible guests, entrepreneurs sharing their authentic experiences, along with episodes featuring just the two of us tackling the tough topics.
So, if you're ready to enhance your connections and sharpen your leadership skills, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Well, welcome back to another episode of Let's Not Sugarcoat It. And today we're joined by Ian Chisholm, founder and partner of Roy Group, a Victoria-based leadership development firm that helps organizations build stronger, more resilient cultures. Ian co-founded Roy Group in 2004 after several years working in social impact and leadership development, including on the Isle of Skye in Scotland. His work focuses on helping senior leaders become better mentors and helping organizations develop the next generation of leaders through practice, reflection, and real-world experience. Ian is also the author of Quiet Champions, A Way Forward for Mentors in Turbulent Times, a book that explores mentorship not as a title we claim, but as something others recognize in us through our presence, care, and impact. His message is especially timely. In a world marked by uncertainty, exhaustion, and rapid change, the leaders who matter most are often not the loudest people in the room, but those who quietly and consistently call forth the best in others. Ian is originally from Saskatchewan, has worked with young leaders from challenging socioeconomic realities, served as the first CEO of Columbia 1400 in Scotland, and now lives in Vancouver Island with his partner in business and life, Anne-Marie Daniel. Well, welcome, Ian.
Welcome.
Hey, thanks very much for having me on your show.
Yeah, so let's just get right into it. Business partners, partnership and business. That's quite challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Being a leader in a organization and having to deal with people on the outside of the home and then coming home and then dealing with your loved one inside the home. Tell us a little bit about your story, how you guys ended up working together and creating this type of leadership movement.
Yeah, I guess Anne-Marie and I met professionally. I was in need of someone who could teach conflict resolution. And so I asked a very good friend of mine named Catherine. She said, my sister would be great. She's young, she's entrepreneurial, and she's an incredible mediator. And that was how Anne-Marie and I met. So I guess we met through work. We should have known. As a mediator, Anne-Marie has a lot to share with leaders about the approaches that mediators and negotiators use, in the same way that I really love sharing with leaders things that professional coaches from the world of sport can use in business. So yeah, I think together we were just an example of 1 + 1 = 5.
Love that.
Okay, so can you give our listeners a little bit more insight of how it is to work with your partner? Because as a married couple, a partner in marriage and in business, there's a few challenges that we had to face ourselves, because how we communicate out here versus inside the home is quite different, because it is a different bond. It is a different relationship that you do have outside of the workplace. So can you give us a few of the challenges, lessons, and wins that you've had over the years working with your partner?
Yeah, I can start with the challenges. I think there's a lot of evenings where, and Anne-Marie and I have talked about this, it would be really nice to come home and share our version of how hard work was and how everybody else was a little bit wrong, and that we were the ones that were kind of fighting for something that was right. But because they're the person that we were up against at the meeting, it just feels like a continuation of work. I do think it's a very big choice to choose to make your living and your livelihood with your partner together rather than separately. And yeah, it's hard to imagine doing anything else now. We've been married for 26 years and have kind of been involved in the same enterprise since we met. Maybe it's something that you get good at. Sometimes I feel more for the people that work with us, in that they know that they're working with a married couple And sometimes that dynamic from the home comes into the meeting, and there they are. They're not your kids, so they shouldn't have to put up with that. But I think in some ways, Anne-Marie and I have learned how to kind of, even though it's a very, very short commute, because our office is in our yard, when we make that commute, symbolically, there's a shift and a line that we cross, and now we're at work together.
But I imagine in your practice, there's a lot of tools, right? Modalities, things like that you use with your clients that are probably very applicable to, your relationship at home. And in some ways, at least we find that by applying some of those things, it's really helped our relationship get stronger, right? In a lot of ways. And so I think it's not about accidentally getting it right. I think it's being very intentional about how we separate, work and family and stuff, but then also making sure that in those times of, discomfort, we'll call it, that, we lean in, because that's what you need to do in business anyway.
Yes.
And so you need to do that in your relationship also. What are some of those things that you have found that really kind of maybe gives you that edge that you found really works in your relationship, where maybe if you weren't in business together, you wouldn't have that?
Well, I mean, I love the title of your podcast, and let's not sugarcoat it. So let's first of all just say there's another expression that the cobbler's children have no shoes. And I think sometimes, even with the background and the toolkits that we have professionally, to deploy those same approaches at home takes a distinct kind of practice, because you're not helping other people navigate through it. You're navigating through it yourself. I think Anne-Marie probably contributes more than I do to things working. As a mediator, one of her favorite expressions is understanding is not the same as agreeing. So even if I don't agree with you, I can put the effort in to really understand what you're trying to say. And I would say I've been on the receiving end of that for 2.5 decades, which is actually a really nice dynamic to have the other person create some space for you to explain yourself. But I'm not sure that I do as good a job in return. And there are certainly times when we both laugh at the fact that the conversation is so rugged, partners, that people would be surprised that know us both, that we have this much trouble. Come on, marriage is something you got to work at.
Yeah.
That's right.
When you say rugged,
Rugged.
Okay to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, this concept of like two different families, maybe two different sets of values, and you're kind of representing the family you grew up with to now create a new family, and your kids will then go on and either emulate the values of this family or the other. I think, when I think of what's been most rugged for us is when we haven't given each other the benefit of the doubt and jumped to an assumption, and all of a sudden it really feels like this person's not in my corner, when in fact they are.
Yeah. I love that. That's an important distinction that we've also, had to adopt, because it's that you've entered into, a marriage, into a relationship with somebody, and then all of a sudden you want to think for a moment that they're against you or that they want you to lose. And when you really kind of put it in that perspective, it sounds ridiculous, because they don't want you to lose. They may be seeing something that you don't see, and it doesn't mean that what they see is right or wrong. It's just different. And so taking that time to have what we call like what's so conversations, where we just drop the filters. We're not thinking about what's right, what's wrong, agree, disagree, any of that stuff, but just to, as you mentioned earlier, Ian, create some space so the other person can feel heard.
Yeah.
And you can understand where they're coming from.
Right.
On both sides, I think is huge, because that is that pathway to win-win.
And I think it's important to go back to what you said there, Ian, about, marrying, and then you come in from two different family dynamics, but also because Canada is so multicultural. Like, I was born in Poland. I was also raised in a completely different way, during communism. The values, the systems, the work ethic, how we approach the love languages, we are not very touchy-feely people. We are now, but I struggled with, saying the I love yous, even to my parents, until maybe my mid-30s, I guess. It was really awkward. It was very awkward to say I love you to my dad without him going, I love you too, and like feeling weird about it. So then you bring that into a relationship, and it is a struggle. It's a way of actually learning about each other. You need to know that we are on the same team, on the same court, playing together versus against each other. That's key for us. That's one thing a tool that we carry in our pocket at all times, knowing that if I'm winning, he's winning. If I'm losing, he's losing. So that puts it into perspective when we have those disagreements, when we come to head. And then, just the saying you always say, you listen to understand, not to respond. So really putting yourself into someone else's shoes, your partner's shoes, and really trying to lean into their experience and what they're going through at that particular moment. And it's such a valuable thing to have, especially when you're in a leadership role where you are mentoring others to help them navigate through this complex world where you do have many different cultures, many different people upbringings that are in leadership roles. And now they're coming out and leading in a certain way and putting their influence and their stamp on the people below them.
There's also a paradox, I think, in marriages where my children are now at the age where they're thinking about, more serious relationships in their 20s and 30s. And in the discussions we've had with them, the advice has been what you're choosing more than anything else is someone who's going to shape you in your life from now on. Because that's what happens in a marriage, is that you really shape each other to be your own person. But because it's over a long term, you also know all of the stages that person has gone through, and some of them are not great stages. And so it's hugely exciting that you're like shaping and creating another person. And we also have to be careful that we're not kind of like, bringing up stuff that is from the past, that's old, that's an old version of me, that I'm vulnerable and you know everything about me. And I just don't want that to come into the excitement of, it's historical and it's brand new. It's always a paradox that I think catches people.
Yeah, well, because our brains are all about, big part of our brain, our subconscious is all about pattern matching, right? And so it always draws from the past to try and make some sense of the present in order to predict the future. And so it is, I love what you said, it like the old versions and new versions of ourselves, because I mean, very much there could be the old version of ourselves that still exist, right, in the present. But if we're really focused on growing and developing, at some point there is that old version that stays in the past. And then with that pattern matching, though, it's really hard to
let it go.
Look at somebody who you look the same generally, right? And maybe your behavior is different now because you're this new version, but the brain is trying to make sense of the future, make it certain. So it's easy to draw from past mistakes and things like that to try and make sense of what's occurring. And so what are some of the things that maybe you do in your relationship to help kind of create that space between drawing from the past and I guess making those judgments, right, on the relationship?
I mean, the first one that comes to mind, Lee, is humor. When we catch ourselves doing something silly or catch the other person holding us to account for something that was, 10 years ago or a bad patch 5 years ago. I have a joke that I use all the time, like, I'm totally different now, which of course I'm not totally different. I'm just more and more of who I've always been. But that seems to wedge in a little bit of laughter that there's still that hope, right? That I'm becoming. So humor, I think, is hugely important for people to laugh at themselves and with each other. And I think hugely important to talk about those patterns. And when you do X today, even though you're this new version of yourself, it's still connected to a pattern that was really painful 5 years ago. And that I'm not done with that pain. I think we've found a huge release in being able to talk about those things and not to feel like somebody's shaming me or bringing up the past, but just being honest about this is still connected to something. We haven't quite worked this through, and that's okay. Like I've kind of learned that that's fair to bring those things up.
Yeah. I mean, I love these conversations because there's always good little reminders, because when you're on this path of any type of growth and development and you're realizing things about yourself, and even if they're things that are not great, usually the path of growth and development isn't like these aha moments of I'm so awesome. Right. It's usually these aha moments of like, oh, this is where I'm not awesome. This is where I need to improve and get better.
It happened
and to
again.
be able to not do that in isolation. Right. It's important to share those things with your partner, so that this way they can join you on that journey, but then they get an understanding of not just maybe kind of being that accountability partner, but then that gives them a sense of, oh, they are kind of leaving this old version of themselves in the past, right? And so when you bring them on that journey, then it becomes easier to have that conversation. Oh, well, I'm not the same person as I once was. Even if I still look the same, sound the same, I'm not necessarily the same. But when you keep that all to yourself, then how can they possibly join you on that journey and really understand that you are changing, you are growing? Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm curious about your group, Roy Group. Can you tell our listeners a little bit of what it is that you specialize in, what your passion, what your life's work is really about, so that we can dive into a few questions about that piece of your life?
Yeah. No, I think in any life, there's like one thing that just keeps grabbing your attention as you go. And for me, it was the dynamic of mentorship. It's just always attracted my attention, whether it was happening around me or in movies or in books. I just love that. I just love that theme. And so not surprisingly, that's what Roy Group has decided to do, coming into our 23rd year. Yeah, to work with organizations to develop their next generation of leaders. But the way we do that is a very specific way, in that we want the senior team of any organization to really start to earn that word mentor together. Being part of a senior team of leaders is such an extraordinary experience, and I'm a big believer that we win more when we aim at something bigger than winning. And so aiming at this idea of let's be the kind of leaders, a team of leaders, that actually becomes like a constellation of mentors to this organization. We have a joke that I don't want me and my team to become mentors to your people. I want you to become mentors to your people. And that's been received really well over the last 20, 22, 23 years in businesses, both in BC and Alberta.
And what's the important part of mentorship? Like, it sounds so you're really focused on mentorship within your practice, and why is that?
Well, that's a big question. I guess I really believe that it's the most ancient strategy we have for human development. Like, we've been doing it from the beginning. I think it's very powerful. I think it's under our nose. I think in many ways it's a free resource that all we have to do is tap into. I think it's an extension of anybody's leadership journey, is when they cross that threshold and now are in that place that other people refer to as mentorship. To me, that just shows that somebody has really learned how to lead very, very well. And so why wouldn't it be something that we aim at together?
Yeah, I love that. And mentorship, like what's, I guess, is there a skill needed for good mentorship?
We started in 2023 using a research software called SenseMaker, which believes that to really get to the, quote, truth about mentorship, we would have to collect hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories of people telling us a story about somebody who's earned the word mentor in their life. And so that's what we did, and then just looked into all those stories. The people that wrote the stories answered the 30 research questions, and we were able to get to some very cool patterns that showed up writ large in many, many of those stories. The crux of it was a really awesome combination, which I think answers your question. We called it the Athena signature. And the Athena signature is when somebody, number one, really knows themselves, have nothing to prove, but they're absolutely able to show up in a way where their conduct creates an atmosphere inside someone else, and they know that that dynamic is happening. So this is a very self-aware person. Combined with number two, a discipline of training their attention on the emerging experience of someone else, that I'm not the leader, this other person is the leader. And I'm recognizing them as someone who's leading something really important. And that makes me really fascinated to find out about it and not necessarily default to my own experience, but to help them figure out how they will play this going forward. When people are really aware of themselves, but can focus their attention on someone else's experience, that seems to be the crux of what people need in their lives in the form of a mentor.
Yeah, I love that, because there's still, I think, this, perception of leadership where it's all about the individual who is the leader. Mm-hmm. And it's about telling people what to do and imparting kind of like their wisdom and knowledge, but kind of solely in a context of, you need to do what I tell you to do. And there's so much relationship involved in leadership. I remember a long time ago, I did a paper, and it was on kind of this like leadership and followership, and really thinking about the difference of actually what's more important, right? Is it the leader, or is it the person or people that follow the leader? Because if you don't have people enrolled, mm-hmm. right, then are you really a leader? Because you're just kind of going at it solo. And so, but at the same time, you still need to have that leader who has the courage to be able to go into the unknown. Because I like to think that if you're going into the known, then it's not really leadership. Leadership is really about stepping into uncertainty and knowing, and then people believing in you, mm-hmm. that, okay, even though we don't know exactly where we're going, we trust in this person, not necessarily in how we're going to get there exactly, but in the person. And so that mentorship side, there's so much of the decision in the leader to decide to mentor, as well as the person deciding that they want to be mentored by that person. That relationship is so important.
I have a question.
I know. See it in your eyes.
Yeah, I'm just like, okay. Great point. What I wanted to add on top of that is, with our concept of relationships are the foundation to every relationship. Mm-hmm. Communication is the foundation to every
accomplishment.
Accomplishment, yes. So do you find that leaders today struggle with admitting that they are wrong or asking for help? Because I feel like we have been conditioned to be, as a woman, strong, independent. I don't need anybody. Men as well have been taught to be, independent, the provider. And having climbed the corporate ladder per se, and you're on top, I find it's difficult when you are on top, at least for some of the clients that we work with, to admit and look in the mirror and say, hey, I actually don't have all the answers, but they're so focused on keeping that spot on top that it is hard to become that leader where you also become vulnerable, because I think vulnerability is what creates connection, which then creates enrollment into and then collaboration and trust. What are some of the challenges that you see in the leadership that you have seen over the last 20 years that keep reoccurring and repeating themselves that we just cannot break away from?
Well, it comes back to a little bit what Lee said, is that there's, I guess, a number of ways that we feel will create confidence in other people. Acting like we know it all and that we know the clear way forward feels like that would be something that inspires confidence in other people. But the truth is, we are much more inspired and engaged by leaders who share what they are working on, even if some of that work is happening in themselves, what they're learning about, what they're struggling with, times that they've failed, all of these things that seem counterintuitive in terms of their ability to inspire confidence actually do engage people really deeply. And once you're together, then the confidence automatically happens. A colleague of mine named Jim Hayhurst and I created the chapter in Victoria of something called Fuck Up Nights. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's fantastic in that it's a worldwide movement that invites leaders from the community to get up on stage, and they then have 7 minutes to tell the story of their most colossal mistake. And there's no silver lining. There's no lessons learned. It's just, this was the situation. This was the choice I made. And it was a terrible mistake. And it never ceases to amaze me when you look out into the audience, there's like 200 people there, 100% engaged in a story about failure. Because somebody was vulnerable enough to say, I don't always have the right moves. I'm just like you, and this was the pattern I faced, and this was the terrible choice I made. It's more instructive than case studies of things that worked. People look at each other and go, I'm never going to do that. So I think you're right. I think this is, I want to say that it's a trend that keeps happening. I think that's been interrupted by the most recent president of the United States, who seems to want things to go backwards. But in general, I think most of the people who are leading are realizing that they've got to drop the guard and that no one expects them to be perfect. Leadership is a very human dynamic, and when you let other people know you're just as human as them, that's when the magic happens.
Now, do you think, so do you think that there's a time and place? So let's say I'm the leader of an organization and we're struggling. Do you think that that person should at that moment tell all of their people, or just their confidants, or reach out to a mentor, a coach, and work through that? Or do you think it's going to give the people who are following a sense of, I don't know if I can trust this person, because if they don't know what they're doing, how are we going to make it through? Is there a time and place? Because I'm only bringing this up because we've had people, we've talked on stages and said that vulnerability is what creates, that trust, the bond, that buy-in. And yet there has been pushback saying, well, I don't want to follow a leader that it doesn't know what they're doing, and so on and so forth. So what is your take on when and how to approach? Because I think that is a key distinction, a key factor of when to show vulnerability and when not to. Do you believe that there's a time and a place for it? Or do you believe that leaders just should be, hey, I'm open, come in, don't know what I'm doing? Is that something that will propel a company and give them that sense of trust?
I think, at Roy Group, we talk about 4 things that leaders have to get really great at: reflection, inquiry, pause, and action. So it's the first one, reflection. Every leader deserves the chance to reflect And part of that is that they deserve a chance to think things through and to say some unpolished things. I don't know about you, but sometimes the way I carry things around in here is dead wrong, and I have to actually say it out loud before I realize how dead wrong it is. I don't think it does a lot of value for a leader to do that reflection in public with their people. I think leaders deserve the chance to reflect, and that normally requires the presence of a mentor, or even better yet, a little constellation of mentors, or a strong circle of friends, or that trusted circle of behind closed doors. These are the people that I trust to help me reflect. Every leader deserves the right to have that in their life. When it comes to sharing it with the team, I think what's really important is that it's shared in an adult to adult way, not an adult to child way. I have reflected, I have made my decision, and this is where we're going. I think it would probably work much better if somebody says, this is something I've been reflecting on the last few weeks. It's something that's not easy for me to reflect on because it means we need to make some changes. But after a lot of reflection, and I'm really open to talking with you about it, how we approach this, but this is where I have landed. That to me brings people into the conversation, but it starts it with something that the leader has actually distilled down. Discernment is vitally important in a world that has information everywhere. How you go away, reflect, and distill down what's most important, I think, is something that we really need leaders to do. And the best way to do that is with these small circles of people that help us do that well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think distinguishing, vulnerability and emotion is important, because I think people tend to think that being vulnerable is all about being emotional, and it can, but it also, I think it depends on the type of emotion. So if you've got a leader who is, their organization or team is going through a tough time, and they need to share something, I think there's always that question as to well, do I share? Because, are people going to lose their faith in me as a leader? I think the fact that that is an uncomfortable place to be in trying to decide what to do. We always say that discomfort is kind of the mind body's way of signaling you need to pay attention, right? This is important. Pay attention. It's not something to avoid. And that means that, I do need to say something. And especially if, the important part of a vision is all about getting people enrolled to want to take action and aligned with the direction that you want to go in. And so if there's something happening within a team organization that's not good, usually there needs to be some form of change that needs to happen in order to go from not good back to good. And so you need to share something, no matter how uncomfortable, even if you run the risk of some individuals deciding, I don't want to work here anymore. I don't want to trust. I don't have faith in this leader anymore. You kind of have to risk that, right? Because leadership is not about you as the person. It's about the people. It's about the organization. It's about, the ideal, right? The vision that you're trying to achieve. So I like that. I like breaking it down where you need to reflect. You really need to think about what to share in different groups.
Yeah.
I think that's important, right? You talked about a mentor, a constellation of mentors, the having some confidants that you can kind of share maybe a whole picture with.
Right.
And then depending on the audience, you kind of have to change the messaging a little bit, but not in a way where you're changing it to be, manipulative or, hiding the truth. It's just, you just need to adjust the message. Right.
I definitely, one of my favorite expressions is that the leader is the most honest person in the room. So I'm a big believer in honesty. Like, if you can learn as a leader to combine transparency with non-judgment, you're going to be able to tackle any difficult situation that comes your way, because you're being absolutely transparent about what's happening, and you're not judging anybody. You're saying this is going to be unhelpful if it continues. But I also believe that like what you're talking about, Lee, is the difference between reacting and responding.
Mm-hmm.
And I think emotion, if we react with emotion, then we do the things that you do when you're frustrated, or you do the things you do when you're sad. If you take that emotion, and emotion is loaded with information, like we should really acknowledge that. Anytime emotion shows up, there's a message there, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's something that is loud and clear that we need to like glean. But we can do that as leaders with a response to say, like in this reflection over the last few days, it's made me really sad. It's made me really question whether we're going to be able to do this. You can be as vulnerable as you want, but you're not reacting. You're not lashing out with the emotion. You have taken some time with the emotion to understand what information is in it, and you're sharing that information. I think it's hugely important for leaders to talk about using their emotions to navigate things, because we know that the other people that are listening to us have that same radar system. So if I'm talking about something that has actually started to make me really sad, they know immediately what I'm talking about. So why wouldn't I use those connections? Life is emotional. It's wonderful. Like feeling emotion is what makes it all worthwhile, even the tough ones. So yeah, I love emotion. I think we should use it. And important in the book, we talk a lot about how it's really important for a mentor to let the other person. It's not comfortable, but it should be safe to disclose any emotion that's coming up as that person makes their way through their challenges. So nice to have somebody that would validate those emotions and say, I can see this is hurting you. I can see this is frustrating you. I can see a lot of joy that you're getting from doing this work. Super important that mentors speak the language of emotion.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a bit more about your book. Maybe let's start off with, I guess what inspired you to want to write the book?
Yeah, I guess I was a very young and under-equipped CEO. I was a CEO at 27 years old. And that put me in way over my head. I didn't have the financial acumen, the business acumen, the marketing acumen. Like, I was a program guy. I like to create experiences, but I should have been a program director, not a CEO of an entire organization. So what I did have was this network of mentors that showed up for me. And it was just the most remarkable chapter of my life, was that these people would somehow be invested in me. So in many ways, the book is an acknowledgement of that time in my life when I was in way over my head, and shares a number of stories because it was on the Isle of Skye, way up in the islands and highlands of Scotland. It's like there's lots of rich stories. So the book was a chance to share some of those examples, but organized around this research. The 17 chapters of the book are basically the 17 strongest messages that came out of the research. And then for each one, it was very easy to like share a story that demonstrated that. So yeah, I hope it's kind of, the book is a nice combination of the science and the art of mentorship and storytelling.
In your book, you focus on turbulent times. So what habits do leaders, are most important when uncertainty is high?
Yeah, I mean, I think we mentioned them earlier. It's these deep disciplines of reflection, inquiry, pausing, and action. When any of us choose to practice leadership in our lives, we would believe that those are the 4 things that you're choosing to practice. That every week of our work is actually a chance to practice reflection, inquiry, pause, and action. And they work together quite wonderfully. You can't find right action without practicing the other 3, for instance. And so, yeah, I think...
what do you do for a pause? Because I know that's like, those are words that, people can kind of think of, those are words that we in leadership just throw out. But for somebody who's listening, they're like, well, what do you mean by pause?
Nice.
Like,
Yeah,
right?
somebody might.
Somebody might not get exactly the gist, because when we have conversations, we know what we're talking about because we've been trained, we've been in that business. But I find when we're talking high level, some of the regular listeners that aren't in that world have a hard time with the just concepts and just
A pause might be going on Instagram for some people, right? Because they're taking a pause maybe from being overwhelmed at work, and so they need to take a break. But that's not really a break in the context of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Pause for us is the exact opposite of reflection. So when a leader reflects properly on like some of the dilemmas that you've just said, how do you wrap your mind around it? Reflection is the discipline of having your mind absolutely full of information in all of the sources of information that are available. The emotions, the patterns, the connections, the metrics, everything. When you reflect properly, you're just holding it all in your mind until you know with assurance, what is the nature of this challenge I'm stepping into. That's the discipline of reflection. Pausing is the discipline of being completely empty. This is about rest and recovery and recuperation and doing something that just kind of refurbishes the kind of energy that it takes to show up in the world as a leader. And the hardest part in a leadership context is helping leaders understand that when they pause completely, this is about the way they treat their mornings and their evenings and the way they eat and what they eat and the way they schedule holidays. What is the cadence of rest that you're going to give yourself on any given day so that you can really show up when you choose one of these other three disciplines? And it's super difficult to help leaders think about pause and practice pause. And the hardest part is to recognize pausing as a practice of leadership when they're doing it. Because we've all been conditioned, particularly in Western Canada, where we're all really hard workers. Bella, you must have recognized that when you came to Western Canada. These people love to work really hard. We experience pausing as an escape from our responsibility. Maybe even a necessary escape from our responsibility. But it's not an escape. It's an essential part of the equation that if we're actually going to be the kind of person who leads other people, you need energy for that, a distinct kind of energy, and you can't get that energy without treating yourself well with rest. So that's what we mean by pause.
Because you introduced the conversation and paradoxes earlier, I also find the pause potentially being a bit of a paradox, because you mentioned it in saying, it's kind of an escape, right? From the hard work, the working, and of course how that can go against a lot of people who are in leadership roles, against kind of their winning formula, because they get there top of the rank or build a business or build a team through working, and working usually more and harder and differently than everybody else. I think though too, for some people, the working lots can be an escape.
Of course it is.
And taking the time to pause can actually bring a lot of discomfort.
Oh, for
because
sure.
then you have to start facing maybe some of the things that you've been avoiding facing, right? And that makes the pause even harder to do.
There's a great story about the gardener. The landowner asks the gardeners to plant this tree. And the first gardener is like a serious hard worker. And he takes his shovel and he gets out there and he puts the tree in a spot. He steps back. It's not quite the right place. So he goes and puts it in another spot, digs another hole. And he does this all day, like digs holes and just to see. He wants to get it just right. And the other gardener takes his tree and sits in the garden all day long and just notices, just pays attention to everything that's going on in the garden. And at the end of the day, walks to exactly the right spot, digs the hole and puts the tree in. I really think leadership is much more impactful when it emulates that second gardener, right? When we realize the value of reflection and inquiry and pausing to get right action. Right action is like the right move at the right time in the right place, which is actually what leadership requires, not busyness.
Mm-hmm.
Busyness is for idiots.
Yeah. I don't like the word busy. It's a bit of a trigger word for me.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what's busy to me may not be busy to you. And that's where, that judgment, that resentment goes. It's like, what do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, we know some very busy people in our lives that
do
get nothing. That do nothing, get nothing done.
And I don't like myself when I get busy, because then I'm just trying to stay in action all the time.
Mm.
Got to step back. A mentor of mine has really helped me figure out the difference between attention and intention, and the ratio in any given day of how much of our day are we spending in intention. Like, I've got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this, and how much of that day is just spent paying attention, understanding the nature of what we're a part of.
Mm-hmm.
When we can balance that equation so that at least there's some adequate time for attention, we start having all the right moves because we've paid attention.
Yeah. I think without that pausing, constantly doing and getting things done, what starts off as responding to a need, right? Responding to moving business, team, aligning actions towards accomplishing a vision, mission, can easily become reaction.
Yeah, compulsive.
And when you're in it, you don't see it, like a fish in water, right? You don't know that you're in it at that time until somebody pulls you out.
You're welcome.
And then oh, okay, I do need to pause.
That's that husband and wife dynamic. I know exactly when he's talking about himself. I know exactly when he's talking about me. We recognize our own patterns, and we're really good at pulling each other out of that water and going, hey,
yeah, what's going on here?
What's going on? Yeah. So, one of your ideas is that you are the most important piece of work you will ever undertake, and it's not about you. Can you unpack that?
Yeah, gosh, there's another paradox.
That's right.
Yeah. One of the things I've noticed, having worked with leaders who are, really people who are really hungry to refine themselves. They really want their finest self to make its finest contribution with others. And yeah, what I've noticed about those people is that they work really hard on themselves. As a matter of fact, every meeting is a chance for them to practice connection. Every email is a chance for them to really hone their communication. Every argument is a chance for them to deepen their skills around understanding and compassion. Everything that they do is about refining themselves. They're the most important piece of work they've ever undertaken. All the other work just becomes a chance for them to work on themselves. And super important, that in the moment, like I mentioned with the Athena signature, that what we found with mentors particularly, but I think this relates to leaders as a whole, you've got to be highly aware that it's not about you, that this effort that you're putting into the situation is not about you. It's about the stories that you're creating with your team. It's about the stories that you're leaving behind. It's an expression of your purpose and a collection of everybody's gifts who have gathered here. Yeah. Work hard on yourself, and it's not about you. That's an important paradox.
Can a leader, or I guess, can somebody be a mentor without being a leader? Like, is there a distinction, a difference between the two?
We use a little equation at Roy Group, R equals QC, that R is the result, and the result is a product of the quality to which things are getting done and the capacity that's being developed. So every task is a chance to play with that Q and the C. We need this to be a 7 out of 10, but I want to use one of our new staff members to do it because I want to develop their capacity. So I think, to me, as I mentioned, mentorship is just an extension of the leadership journey. Mm-hmm. It's when that C factor becomes key, that it's not about me anymore. I've slayed my dragons. I've had my successes and my wipeouts, and my role in this person's life is to really help them lead through something. And so I think understanding leadership and having practiced leadership yourself is pretty important in that endeavor. And then you have to let it go, because it's not about the way you tackled this in 1993. It's the way this person's going to tackle it in 2026. So it's this strange, I've been there, but not to there you haven't, right? That's always the case. You've been through stuff, you're seasoned, you understand the way the world works, and you're prepared to set that to the side and allow somebody else to focus on what's theirs. That seems to be when the magic happens.
You mentioned, observation a couple times, right? Paying attention. What are some of the things that somebody should be observing or paying attention to understand whether they should be a mentor? Are there specific external markers? You mentioned capacity, so building capacity within an organization or a team. And I guess, are there internal markers? We talk about inquiry. Are there key questions that somebody should be asking themselves to figure out, based on external markers or internal markers, if they're ready? Or is it, maybe there is no readiness to being a mentor. It's just something that you need to start doing, right?
That's interesting. I like your idea of external markers and internal markers. External markers, I think, if you're paying attention, the world will be good at identifying to you that you could really help here. Here's an entrepreneur who's doing something that's kind of similar to what you've done in the past, and somebody wants to introduce you. Pay attention. Those are the external markers. They come from community. There's a person over here and a person here, and this story will unfold more beautifully if they know each other. So trust people that are connecting you to situations or people that might need you. Those are the external markers. They come from community. Internally in the book, I talk a little bit about a German idea called Zugenruhe, which most often gets used to describe migratory animals. It's like when a caribou starts to get this feeling inside that the big journey needs to start soon. And it really twists your tissues and changes what you have an appetite for. It's a natural force that cannot be denied, and it's rarely pretty. But I really think there's a natural Zugenruhe inside people when they want to start to show up for the next generation. I think it's undeniable. When you feel it, you'll feel it. And suddenly, these things that you've accomplished are less important to you than really being able to show up for other people in your community. So, I think pay attention to the Zugenruhe inside. It shows up like an appetite. I want to be that kind of a leader. In many ways, I wrote the book for myself to try to figure out how I'm going to do that.
So I do want to, because when I am mentoring some women in business, a lot of them have this feeling that they're not where they want to be because they're comparing themselves to somebody who is exponentially further along than they are. But I always bring it back and say, but do you think you're further than some people that are just starting per se? You are always a mentor, because there's always someone that can learn from your journey where you are today. Mm-hmm. So you do not have to be, a 6-8 figure earner, let's say, if we're talking business, to mentor someone who is only making 15 grand a year, right? Maybe that's their next step, and that is the value they need to hear. They don't need to be hearing from those that are making per se at this age, the 9 million, 10 million, billions of dollars, because the difference from where they are to where they want to go is so great that it becomes overwhelming. And then that's when dreams start diminishing. So I always say mentor in the realm where you are comfortable. Where you are is where you are today. And there's value to be added because there are people who haven't even taken those steps. And you need those steps to get from point A to point Z. You don't just go, I'm here and tomorrow I'm going to be there just because some billionaire on social media told me, it's a quick follow these 2 steps and you'll be rich. Like the world has changed so much right now that there is a disconnect between the steps that entrepreneurs and people need to take to get to a certain level versus what they actually have to do because of social, because of these, schemes online and how quickly you can maneuver. Yeah, I mean, there are the unicorns out there that you just fall in right time, right place. But majority of it, there is a order. Like you said, you were a CEO at 27 and you were over your head because the life skills, the experiences weren't there. So it's so important, especially for the young leaders that are coming in. They all are so hungry, which is amazing. And you still need to go through those experiences in order to get to a certain place so that you can show up as that leader. But experience, lived experience, lived failures are what will shape you. Surrounding yourself with individuals who are better, who are stronger, who are further along and taking that. But remember, you are where you are, and there's always value to be added for those who aren't there yet.
Yeah, it's almost like I like that perspective because it's almost like maybe there is a wrong time to be a mentor, but it's almost like there is no real wrong time because, I mean, every time we pick up, if you've read a book 2, 3, or 4 times, same book, every time you read it, if you're reading in at different stages of life, you always pull new things from it.
Different,
right? And I think 2 key things is like when you're mentoring kind of like in an earlier stage, you haven't made it yet. You are going to have a perspective of where you currently are, right? That you're not going to have when you finally arrived. When you've built the successful business, had a successful exit, if you wait till then to mentor, you're still going to have good lessons, but you may miss some things, right? Because you're just in a different place now in life. And then I also think that mentoring when you're going through it helps you actually like kind of learn your own lessons as well, because I think it's easy to do the thing. And if we're not taking the time to reflect and pause, as you're talking about, being a mentor actually helps you do that for yourself. So in a way, I haven't really thought of it like this. Mentorship is really just kind of like you helping others, but then you're also kind of helping yourself in the same process.
Yeah, I think, what do they say? Comparison is the thief of all joy. One of the things that mentors can do is to encourage a young entrepreneur to be here, right? Be with what you're creating. Where is it at? An honest assessment of what are the milestones that you've hit. Like, look backwards. Look at how much you've accomplished. That's real. And it's great to have goals, and even clear goals of what good would look like. Amazingly important for a mentor to help people have goals. But more than anything else, I think if there's something that a mentor does, it spends time with you, enough time so that they are able to recognize what this person's gift is, and then be able to ask some questions like, is this enterprise, is this partnership, is this experience that you're having, is it giving you a chance to share your gift with the world? Because if it's not, we should change course a little bit, because you have this immense gift to give the world. We've got to find a vehicle that will allow you to give it. I think that weeds out a lot of the comparison and a lot of the, experiencing the gap. Like, I'm never going to be enough. let's look at the facts. This is what you've accomplished. These are the scenes in your life when you were at your most exquisite. What is the gift that's in those moments? And how do we share your gift going forward? That's going to unleash a lot more entrepreneurial success than holding ourselves to these uber high standards that, quite frankly, most of it's bullshit.
Yeah.
These people that are killing it, if it feels like it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Well, and the lessons are in what you don't get right most of the time.
Okay.
It's not to say that you can't learn from what you do right. Obviously, you can. Bella and I went and saw John Maxwell a long time ago.
Nice.
And he shared a story on stage talking about when he was writing one of his books. He interviewed, a whole bunch of kind of like CEOs and entrepreneurs who were like at the tail end of their career. And so he said, now one of the questions he has is, now that you can, like, all the cards in the deck are face up, so you can see where things went right, where things went wrong. Would you now change anything to minimize your mistakes so that you get everything right?
Right.
And there was a couple of them. He said that yes, they would change it, but most of them said no, they wouldn't change a thing. And when he asked why, he says because they didn't learn from what they got right. They learned mostly from what they didn't get right and from what they got wrong, from their mistakes. And those were those powerful moments. And I think it's really important when you're up to anything, big and worthwhile in life. Yeah, like you said, it's good to have those goals, but you really need to pay attention to when you do make those mistakes, when you trip up, take the time to learn from those so that you can take those learnings and project them into the future. Now more than ever, even though it's an old problem, but now more than ever, because of social media, all we see is everybody doing it right all the time,
right,
nailing it,
killing it.
And then when we're not nailing it, when we're in the struggle, we feel like, I can't do this, right? I'm never going to be that because I'm dealing with this. And obviously to make it there, you don't deal with this type of stuff.
Right.
And it's so important to
and that's what you just described, those experiences in life. It's almost as if they get woven very, very tightly, right? Right and wrong, successful and failure. Like when we're very hard on ourselves and we weave it very tight. One of the things I like to think that mentors can do is just to help loosen that weave a little bit. Like help people pull their experience apart just a little more so they can understand what about this is real and what about this is a really tough story. I've said to myself, that's a nice way to think about time with a mentor. Is just let's remake sense of your experience, giving yourself a little more credit.
Yeah, and I think also there is a part of mentorship and leadership where we reflect what the people need to see. And it is quite difficult sometimes for people to look at, well, I'm not all of that.
Right.
I am good at these things.
Right.
But I've created this illusion that I am all of these things. And now if I let this piece go, who am I?
Right.
Right?
People
find out, am I going to lose credibility? Am I going to fail? What is going to happen? Because if I'm not this, who am I? And that's where I feel a lot of people get stuck. We went through a growth and development ourselves as a couple and individually at looking honestly at the things in business that we are good at. Because we're not good at everything. I mean, I will have accountants to do my accounting because I don't want to do, and I'm not good at it. And even if I was to hire somebody who I needed to mentor, I would probably give them the bad habits that I have as an accountant because I'm not an accountant. So just going through those layers of ourselves and dropping the things that we believe we need to be to succeed.
Right.
Versus just being who we are truly, and then hiring in and getting the talent, because great leaders, they don't know it all, like you said. They hire out the best. We want the best around us. I want to learn from them in the spaces that I am not great at.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that we're super zealous about. So everyone on our team knows what their gift is.
Mm-hmm.
It's written on the back of their photograph in the office. It's a statement that describes this is the unique blessing that this person brings this team. And it's super specific. So, for instance, my gift statement, Nina, who is our chief of staff, nothing goes in my calendar that does not use that gift.
Mm-hmm.
Makes for a great day, makes for a great week, makes for a great life when somebody's helping me only put things in my schedule where I get to use that unique gift that I have. And we try to tailor everybody else's weeks as much as possible so that everybody, that's the beauty of team, is that it's a collection of these gifts all working together to make the situation whole.
Mm-hmm.
That's what leaders do, is they make the equation whole. They're very honest about where the equation is not whole and take action to make it whole again.
I like that. We've talked a lot about leaders and mentors, not too much about the mentee.
Good question.
What should somebody look for? I mean, we talked about kind of like the markers of being a mentor, but what about a mentee?
Yeah.
When would you know that you need a mentor, or maybe that you should seek one out, and then what should somebody look for in a mentor?
Or I'm going to twist the question a little bit. As a mentor, when do you know that the mentee is just not going to, because there are some people who get the mentors, get the stuff just to fill their buckets, just to say that they did, but they actually do nothing with it. So as a mentor, when do you let a mentee go, or how do you navigate someone who is not actually ready to be mentored?
Yeah, this is a super interesting question. At the book launches, some smartass asked me, what's the next book about? And I was like, hey, easy, Tiger. Like, I just finished this one. There's no next book. But because Quiet Champions was researching what mentees had to say about mentors to find out what is it about mentors that make them valuable, the second book should really be asking mentors what makes a great mentee, and tackle some of these things that you just talked about, Bella. You know what? I think it comes down to two things: time and good manners. Time. For the mentorship relationship to take root, it just needs time. It needs breakfasts. It needs afternoons. It means like wasting a day with somebody. Mentorship is not efficient, but it's wildly effective. But, you can't do it in a nice, clean, clinical hour once a month on Zoom. It needs to be like time spent with somebody. So, is this somebody that I enjoy spending time with? And if there's a reason why I don't enjoy spending my time with this person, it's probably not going to last. And that's what's linked to good manners. I think the best mentees tend to these relationships. They tend to that whole constellation of mentors. I could spend a lot of time feeling that I was undeserving of the constellation of mentors that showed up for me on Sky. But let's be honest about it. I'm from Saskatchewan. I have really great manners. I was constantly touching base with them to find out how are things going with their kids. I'm going to be in town. I'd love to stop around for a coffee. Like, there's a few things I want to ask you about. You're important to me. I found ways of letting those people know that they were important and helpful to what I was doing. That takes time. A good part of good manners is just creating time for the people that are important to you. So, yeah, showing up on time, being curious, all of the things that our grandmas taught us were good manners, I think makes for a good mentee. And when a mentor knows that they're not the person for this particular mentee, I think they have an option to dig into that a little bit of what are they contributing to this relationship not being optimum. That's a good first thing to start. I think they always have the option of introducing them to somebody else, but before they do that, I think it would be a great pattern to be transparent and non-judgmental about with the mentee. To say, something's going on and I want to talk to you about it. There's a few things that are happening that make me not look forward to this time together. And so I want you to know about that because I respect you and I want you to have these kinds of relationships. It's possible that just being transparent and not judgmental about those patterns might open the door to a deeper relationship, and they actually are the sort of person that you want to be a mentor to. So I think there's lots of options when you hit one of those situations where it feels like a mismatch.
Yeah, I mean, for those are awesome points. And I feel like there are also people who expect results. They hire somebody because they want results, but they're not willing to do the work. So I feel like
That matters.
Right? It's that ownership, because there's a lot of people that want something,
Sure,
but they're not willing to do the work, and they will blame and everyone and every situation around them, but never really look at what it is that they need to do.
unless someone very kindly helps them see that pattern.
Yeah.
I was with a young person a couple of weeks ago, and we had lunch. He told me about his situation, and at the end of the lunch, I don't know what the relationship will become. I've got a lot of time for him. I really liked him. But I did need to share with him, without any judgment, but total transparency. And I said his name, and I said, I've noticed something about our conversation, that you've told me about all the different people that you're doing things with, and in each case, you've come to the conclusion that their head is up their ass. That like somehow it's everybody else's problem in the way they see things. And I don't know, but I think you should pay attention to that pattern. Because I don't think you want to go through life always believing that everybody else are the people with their head up their ass. Yeah, it was good. Felt like I did my job. I hope it changes something for him. I hope it opens up something that brings him more joy.
Mm-hmm. But I think that is an important thing about getting a mentor is some people, I think, believe that by getting a mentor, it's making the difficult thing that you're having problems with easier to do.
Sure.
And it doesn't really, especially when the difficult thing is not skill-based, it's more emotion-based, right? You're avoiding taking action because of a fear of failure or being found out, imposter syndrome, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a mentor can help you kind of work through that.
Yeah, be accountable for it.
Helping you be self-aware if you're willing to be self-aware. But if all you're looking for is just someone to help you do the thing easier,
right?
I mean, then
tell you that you're right.
Yeah, then you're probably looking for an employee, not a mentor in that case. So I think that is important, that you need to be willing to do the work, I think, even more when you're getting a mentor, not doing the work less.
Yeah, and come up against some hard things that you might not like to hear about or see, and really sit in it and reflect without the judgment. Just really sit in it and feel into what is holding me back.
Do you ever see on the mentee side someone struggling to maybe let their mentor go and find a new one? Because I think a huge part of the relationship obviously is, well, building a really good foundation relationship with somebody to a point where I think ideally you really like spending time with that person. But if there comes a point where the mentee feels like maybe they've outgrown their mentor and it's time for them to find another one, do you ever see there's some challenges there when a mentee's having a hard time kind of saying goodbye and finding a new mentor at all? Or how does a mentee navigate that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it comes up, there's a limit that we've unintentionally placed on mentorship in the Western world by somehow molding the mental model that it's a one-to-one relationship. We came up with that. It comes from Greek mythology, and there's a whole thing of why, I'm the protege and you're the mentor, and that's the connection. The truth is that mentorship is from the realm of community. It's of community. And the programs in communities that surround young entrepreneurs and young leaders, and really every young person with like a constellation of mentors. I've used that expression several times today. That's actually a more natural way for us to show up for each other. That I'm going through a period in my life, and Auntie Jane is the person that I really trust to get through that with. But years later, it's actually Uncle Joe that's the person that I need to go spend some time with. And so the best mentorship programs in the world, MIT being the top of that list to me, their venture mentoring service, builds that in. Every entrepreneur has 3 or 4 mentors assigned to them that get together all together. And it's almost like this personal board of directors together. And that's really long lasting. Even if each individual relationship ebbs and flows, the relationship as a whole of that group of people, they also keep each other accountable to really show up in a good way for their mentees. So yeah, like leadership, if we can get on with making mentorship a team sport, society is going to go through a quantum. So we got to make that happen.
Yeah. I do agree with the whole, once you've outgrown, especially in business, if you're sitting at the table and you're the smartest one in the room, it's time to switch rooms, because you're not growing, you're not moving yourself forward. So it's same with, mentors. At some point, we went through even, our couples counselors and individuals. At some point, the conversation for us, got to the level, it's like, we need something else. Like we've worked through this and we keep coming back, but there's no level of growth with this person. Like we've outgrown that conversation. So now it's time to move on to something else, someone else, to give us that, momentum to keep growing and learning. But yeah, so I do agree with the whole having multiple mentors and then changing rooms, changing mentors, if you've outgrown, because you never want to be
That's right.
the smartest one in the room.
No, that's right.
Okay, well, on that note, where can people find you?
Company-wise, we're at roygroup.net, ROY group.net. And for the book, it's quietchampions.ca.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for coming in and having this conversation. I think it's much needed in today's world to kind of slow down, reflect, and have somebody to bounce ideas and just life with. Build that trust, that connection, that vulnerability during specific times. And
mentorship's very important.
Yeah.
So thank you, Ian.
Hey, pleasure.
With us.
Great to meet you both.
Thanks, same. Okay, till next time.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained valuable insights to elevate your life and business.
If you found value in our conversation, spread the love. Share this episode with family and friends, and let's grow this supportive community together.
And don't forget to like and follow us so we can reach more amazing people just like you.
Until next time, remember, let's not sugarcoat it. Keep it real, raw, and unfiltered.